don't let the car burn up. The car, please.
His arms broke.
Gotcha.
Please, the car, man. Get the wallet out the car, please.
How old is he?
We don't know.
How old are you?
Hey, get the wallet out the car.
He has a broken arm and a leg.
Someone get your cuffs out.
I can explain everything.
Well, that was stupid.
No, my life was in jeopardy.
From the police?
No,
Oh, okay.
somebody was chasing me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the police.
Yeah, somebody was. I could just broke arm. Just broke arm. It's a ride.
You got the
God damn, man. My wallet. Get my wallet out the car. Hey, can you please get the wallet? Hey, the wallet. Bro, please do not let the wallet burn up.
I think most of us are on the side.
Hey, can somebody get the wallet? Bro, please get the wallet, bro.
What up, dog?
God damn. Hey, listen. Do not let the wallet burn up. The wallet is very important.
I can't get in there, man.
Listen,
It's on
without
fire.
the wallet, nope. Please get that wallet.
I'm gonna see.
Can I get you like something to wipe my face?
Yeah, I'll get some over first. Just back this thing up.
Okay. In the bag.
Hey, why is your car on fire?
Move out of the way.
Let the car burn up.
In this bag. Okay.
I definitely would have skipped this.
Grab the wallet, bro.
One more. Then I'm gonna go.
I know. I got Cody right here.
It's not gonna blow up. Just play it.
I was just in the passenger seat.
Well, no, you on probation or parole or anything?
Nothing.
Nothing at all?
My dad, you know.
So your dad was just driving?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what he got going on with, you know. I don't got nothing. Ain't nothing on me, you know. I ain't got no.
Nothing's gonna be in that passenger seat?
Nothing.
No guns, no weed, no something stupid?
I don't got nothing.
Alright.
I'm just.
Because once the fire department...
What do you would have to move? Fire truck, let him go.
Alright. Pull him over here.
No medical needed.
Unlock this. He's gonna have to get looked at. Is your chest still hurt?
Yeah.
That's it? No.
The car just blew up.
Well, it's on fire. Did you see the officer try to pull you over?
I ain't had nothing to do. I don't know what. That's, you know. I don't know what he got going on through his mind, but I know.
Well, I'm just curious if he was saying anything, because he was
His license and shit. I don't
because he
know.
was driving fine for a little bit, like, and then all of a sudden you just started driving crazy.
In the Walmart parking
I
lot.
don't know.
You had
grab that.
You said your dad just got shot at?
Probably around your PD.
Or he got shot?
Stand by.
Where'd he get shot at?
On
10-4.
South side. This is like a month.
Return to
Probably a month and a
station.
half.
Is that why his arm's broken?
Yeah, he just had a metal rod.
I was gonna say, you can see the mark. So his arm's broken because he got shot on the south side?
That guy.
All right, just give me a second, all right, man? I'll have the officer chill with you for a second, all right?
Yeah.
Where's the other guy?
He's at an ambulance with their Mueller's with him. So the driver was so concerned about his wallet, he just kept asking us for a wallet.
Well, he kept saying that he's not a felon. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a gun in here.
There's a bunch of baggies in the door too.
Cool.
You got gloves on?
No, I mean I have those ones.
Right away.
Yeah.
He was so concerned about it.
Scale right here.
On the floor. See it?
Yeah.
Huh?
There's a round on the floor next to the gas pedal.
Okay.
They was talking about.
Get your blood sugar, okay?
Here's his wallet.
You got my wallet? Let me see.
I got your wallet.
Let's see my wallet.
Everything.
Look at the ID. Look at it. Look at my license.
Yeah, what about it?
Look at the name. Look at it.
Well, Wade?
That's my name, bro.
It is.
Yes. It's wet. Why is it wet for?
I ran him if you did that.
Wait, brother.
Oh, all right.
Why is my wallet wet?
Because they sprayed it because your car's on fire.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
Hold it.
Yeah, clear that in the car, please.
Just put it on a seat.
You put it on the seat and do it. All right, man. Right now there's a gun right where you were sitting.
I ain't my gun. I ain't
Well.
my car.
But it's where you were sitting.
Not my
So right now you're gonna have to come back to the police department. Well, we can have a conversation about it. But right now it's sitting where you were sitting. All right, you get what I'm saying? Like there's not a whole lot I can do. You get what I'm saying? So it's sitting where you were sitting. More IDs?
No, more ammo. Here's my scribe. This is my hands are wet.
Where's the ammo?
This is all in center console. Box of ammo, center console.
Nice. Is it cold?
Yep. Hollow points. But I found another thing over on that side.
The 99, do you have those?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loose in the center console.
One's going to be out of Greenfield Police Department. Going to be for obstructing. And I'm also showing a felony full interdiction out of West Dallas for carrying a prohibited weapon.
10-4, so I assume he's a felon.
Affirmative.
10-4, thank you. What's up?
phone was in there still?
Yeah, she found it.
It works?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if she found it though. To be honest, I gotta check. All right, man, I gotta. I'll check for you. I gotta read this to you though, so you just gotta listen, okay? All right, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to consult with a lawyer before any questioning, and to have a lawyer present with you.
My work is easy because I use ClickUp. Here's how I keep track of all my tasks. I start by brain dumping everything I need to get done in a list view. Next, I set a priority and a due date to keep things on track. I create custom statuses to organize my progress exactly how I want it. I like to add the action items field so AI can show me the next steps. I add my teammates as watchers so they're in the loop. ClickUp makes work easy, from personal projects to running a multi-billion-dollar company. Click the link below to create your workspace for free.
Welcome to Lighthouse Dental, creating beautiful, healthy smiles 7 days a week. Our goal is to make dental care as comfortable and convenient as possible. Here are just a few of the reasons why so many people chosen Lighthouse Dental for their family's dental care. We are open 7 days a week and offer convenient hours, including evenings and weekends. We always make time for dental emergencies. Lighthouse Dental features modern state-of-the-art technology, including digital x-rays and in-chair patient entertainment. Our office is home to a variety of dental specialists so that you can get complete care all in one place, without having to travel to different specialists' offices. Lighthouse Dental offers direct insurance billing. We'll take care of all the insurance paperwork and have your insurer pay the clinic directly, saving you both time and money. Whether you need dentures, have a dental emergency, or just want a routine cleaning and checkup, please give us a call today. At Lighthouse Dental, we look forward to seeing you smile.
Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised. Cops is filmed on location with the men and women of law enforcement. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
This guy is driving a stolen Honda, and we saw him getting on the freeway. Ran his plate on computer, and even before we turned the lights on, he took off. Okay, we're coming up to Yakima, going about 70. Now we blew the red light and blew the four-way at Park. Still eastbound, coming up to Pacific. We should have a unit with spike strips here. Speeds are about 50, we're coming up to 72nd.
Northbound McKinley approaching 72nd, the other car. 046.
Westbound 72nd.
Westbound 72nd, McKinley 046.
How to make an amazing scrambled egg using this lovely stuff made from ingredients that haven't been passed through a cow.
All right. Spawn in. First things first, join the game. To know with the weed farm. First things first, join the game. We're gonna go fast. Spawn in. First things first, grab the key. Gonna be a little dark. Go down. Go to your weed farm. Pick up the weed farm key. Head inside. Don't run past this. You need the hoe and you need the seed. Spawn in.
So you want to get the hands, so just go around in Vista. Head over to the pawn shop, which is right in the top area. It's your tutorial seeds. So for the first 50 or so, same time. Now you can ignore this little green circle thing. This is just because I'm in Unreal Engine. I got my debug stuff activated. But you're just going to want to repeat this process. You're going to farm your... You're just going to want to repeat this process. You're going to harvest your cannabis, click on it, replant the seeds, and then now we've got some Berry Bliss cannabis. So now we're going to want to take that Berry Bliss cannabis back here, and then we've got these grinders in our grinding room. So we got this Berry Bliss grinder here that we can upgrade for free, and then unlock the slot for free. And then you can just insert all of them by inserting max, or you can insert a single stack. And then now you got to wait for this to process. And then once it processes, you can collect it here. So there you go. You made your first Berry Bliss weed baggie, which is one of the 4 strains that you have. So now what you're going to do is you're going to run up here. You're going to go to this guy. So now what you want to do is you want to exit your weed farm, and you're going to want to sell this, right? So there's 2 people you can sell it to. One is better than the other. So the first guy that you can sell it to is this guy over here that we saw earlier in the homeless encampment. This guy behind the fence right here. If you just walk up to him and press F, you can see all of the items that he accepts and what price he accepts them at. So minus 20%. So you're getting a little bit of a worse price on this guy. So all you do to sell it is you drag it over and you drop. Now the other guy is in the other pawn. Now the other guy you can sell to is in the pawn shop in the back. So remember when we were in the pawn shop, we have this little door in the back. If you open it, there's this little mysterious area in the back where you have a second guy that you can sell to. He has plus 0%, so you're not losing that 20% price. So you can just drag it over, drop, and there you go. You get your money. And there you go, your cash increases. So when you're down in your weed farm, you may have noticed you have these stats. So 2 of the stats you have are Farming Fortune and Tool Power. So what Farming Fortune does is it basically controls how much you get when you harvest. So if you had like 400 fortune, you'd get like 5 as much. So 100 Farming Fortune is a guaranteed double. If you had like 110 fortune, that would be 100% chance to get double and then a 10% chance to get triple. If you had like 320 fortune, it would be 100% chance to get 4 times and then a 20% chance to get 5 times. So it takes a little getting used to. Tool power is basically just how far you harvest, like how much your tool reaches. And you can view your leveling in the farming level and your skills. And you can see what each level gets you and how much XP it takes to get to the next level. And you can increase this level simply by just farming. So you're going to want to repeat this process as much as you can. Now, the next thing you want to do to increase the amount that you farm is to get your farming fortune up as fast as you can. So the best way to do that is these little crafting stations for armor. So the one you're going to want to start with is the Berry Bliss one, which is the shoes. So it's 1 Berry Bliss paper to start, and then after that, you just upgrade it by using the Berry Bliss. So if you want to get the harvesting shoes immediately, what you can do is you can run up here, and you've got this cannabis paper roller. And you have to accumulate enough money to buy it. And this is where you can make all the different papers. And then now you're all dripped out. Now that I know at your gas station, you're going to find a ton of things. If you want, you can like purchase weed baggies to help you upgrade stuff. But the main thing you're going to want to purchase here is water bottle. You're going to want to get yourself a water bottle so you can start watering your beds.
Take 30 minutes for yourself and find out what being curve strong can do for you.
For a few years, I tried my hand at scrapping in my area for a living, and surprisingly, I did pretty
boost that it gives. So for the air filters and lights, you want to purchase the giving your plants a grow boost. All are very good and will give you a little boost of farming for each strain if you ever have a cluttered inventory of the. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up the real estate agent and you're going to get yourself an Urban Vista apartment key. Now that you have your apartment key, you're going to want to run over to the elevator in the back. Then you're going to click on the keypad. This is going to spawn you into your first personal apartment. Now, the first thing, most important thing you're going to want to do now that you're in your apartment is click set as spawn on your bed. So now you're going to spawn here every time you open the game. And there you go. You guys are now started in Greed of Man. You now have some money. You have a business going. You've got some armor on you. Do know that there's 10 or more different businesses that you can get along the way. I'll make tutorials for them.
This happened after a long and boring day at school. While returning back to my house, I was pretty excited, as it was a Friday, which meant no school the next day. While approaching my house, I noticed that our garage door was left open and the lights were on. My dad had left for a business trip that same day, and I figured that he must have left in a hurry and had forgotten to close the door. I didn't give it much thought, and switched off the lights and closed the garage door. I played some video games and watched a movie. My mom had to go to her friend's house for whatever reason, so I had the house all to myself, and it was nighttime. I went to the kitchen to make myself a drink, and I saw that the garage lights were switched on again. I figured my mother must have gone in there for some reason and had left the lights on, but in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake this unsettling feeling that something was wrong. I went into the garage again, and right away, I saw that every drawer in my dad's workshop area had been opened, and many of his tools were laying around. Whoever was in his garage was surely looking for something. I figured that it had to have been my mom, but when she briefly stopped by the house earlier that evening, I didn't notice her going to the garage, and she wasn't there for very long either. I was honestly creeped the hell out by this point. I didn't see anybody else in the garage, so I went back into my house, making sure to lock the door behind me. As I was watching TV, from behind me, I heard the knob on the door that led into the garage start to violently rattle. In a panic, I got up from the couch and stared in horror at the door. After the person on the other side failed to open it, they let out a loud scream and began to viciously pound on the door. I quickly ran upstairs to grab my cell phone, and then I got it into my head that I needed to exit the house before calling the police. I guess with all the adrenaline running through my body, I didn't notice that all the loud bashing noises from downstairs had come to a stop. Upon coming back down, I immediately made for the front door, which I had to go through the living room to get to. Looking back, I probably should have went through the back. I was very lucky, because when I entered the living room, I saw the intruder. He was a very big man and had an axe in his hands, which he had taken from my dad's workshop. The man had his back to me and appeared to be looking behind an armchair in the far corner of the living room. I'm guessing that the TV, which was still playing the movie, masked my footsteps as I entered the room. I didn't go back upstairs. That would have been stupid. I turned around and hastily made my way to the back door. After running a short distance, I called the cops and reported the incident. They informed me that they would be there in 5 minutes. I then went to my neighbor's house, who was a really good friend of my father's, and waited there until the cops showed up. To make a long story short, the police searched the whole house, and just as I feared, the man was nowhere to be found. They discovered that the intruder had smashed through the door in the garage with the axe. It was kind of a flimsy door, and it would have taken him a few good swings to break through it. I called my mom, and she came back as soon as possible. After she heard about the incident, she hugged me and was grateful that nothing had happened to me. I honestly don't know if my dad had forgotten to close the garage door, or if the intruder somehow opened it. But regardless, whenever you leave your house, always double check to make sure your doors are locked and secured, because it's a scary world we live in. A little background information to set the scene. I live in a house that is directly across the street from a cul-de-sac. Beyond the cul-de-sac is the entrance to a forest that stretches on for miles. The woods are pretty dense in terms of trees and bushes. When I was younger, I would love to ride my bike or scooter down various pathways through the forest and back to my house. Since it was a short distance, there was a bit of a downhill slope. One day when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, I was riding my bike down the street that led to the cul-de-sac. There was multiple openings at the end of the cul-de-sac where you could clearly see the forest from the street. I was distracted by someone standing in the woods off in the distance. I wasn't paying attention, and I accidentally ran into a small car that was parked outside one of the houses. It was kind of embarrassing, but thankfully I wasn't injured or anything. The person began pacing back and forth frantically, like they were trying to decide on something. It was then that I noticed that this person was wearing what looked like a black raincoat. He didn't have his hood up, so I could clearly see his head. He was a balding middle-aged man. And I'm not entirely sure, but I think he was talking to himself. I was a bit weirded out, so I hid behind the car that I ran into, and lifted my head just high enough over the trunk so I could still see what was happening. It was then that I saw something in his hand that seemed to give off a bright shine every time he walked under a ray of light coming through one of the overhead trees. It was a knife, and from where I was, I could see that the knife appeared to be stained red. I gathered up my bike and was about to head straight back to my house. When I looked back to where the dude was, I froze. The man had stopped pacing.
Welcome to Lighthouse Dental, creating beautiful, healthy smiles 7 days a week. Our goal is to make dental care as comfortable and convenient as possible. Here are just a few of the reasons why so many people chosen Lighthouse Dental for their family's dental care. We are open 7 days a week and offer convenient hours, including evenings and weekends. We always make time for dental emergencies. Lighthouse Dental features modern state-of-the-art technology, including digital x-rays and in-chair patient entertainment. Our office is home to a variety of dental specialists so that you can get complete care all in one place, without having to travel to different specialists' offices. Lighthouse Dental offers direct insurance billing. We'll take care of all the insurance paperwork and have your insurer pay the clinic directly, saving you both time and money. Whether you need dentures, have a dental emergency, or just want a routine cleaning and checkup, please give us a call today. At Lighthouse Dental, we look forward to seeing you smile.
It was now staring right at me. I panicked and dropped down behind the car, letting go of my bike, which made a loud metallic clank as it collided with the street. Not knowing what to do, I waited for about 30 seconds before peeking my head back out from behind the car. The person was still standing there, just staring. Then suddenly, the person started sprinting towards me, letting out a deranged scream, followed by something that I will never forget as long as I live. I launched myself back onto my bike and started pedaling home as fast as I could. When I made it to the end of the street, I turned back and saw the psycho walking back into the woods. When I got back home for dinner, I didn't say anything about it to my parents or my sister. I was afraid that they wouldn't let me ride down the cul-de-sac anymore. I guess being a dumb kid, that was more important than my own safety. It's been about 10 years, and we still live in the same house, and haven't heard about any kidnappings or murders happening around here in the past decade. So I'm not entirely sure what that person was doing out there. Maybe he was just some mentally unhinged nutcase off his meds. Maybe he was a crazed drug addict. Whatever the case may be, I'm glad I didn't meet him and his knife up close and personal. I used to date this guy named Jake. I met him through mutual friends, and at first things were okay between us. But there was something about him that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Jake seemed to just kind of show up around places where I would be, without any kind of setup. This happened to me more than a few times, mind you. It was like I was being stalked by my own boyfriend. He gave off this weird vibe that would have been assigned to anyone not to date this person. But to be honest, I wasn't in a very good place in my life at the time. I was very depressed, had a bit of a drug problem, and had very low self-esteem. He knew that. So when he pursued me, I went with it. We ended up dating for about 2 years. About halfway into the relationship, he went to jail, and I ended up having to move in with my parents. When I would make the 2-hour drive to visit him, I began to notice that his personality took a turn for the worst. He became very possessive, and noticeably more uncomfortable in his own skin. The times I couldn't be there, since I always couldn't make that drive to see him, seemed to push him closer and closer to his breaking point. I think something happened to him while he was in jail. When he finally got out, I eventually moved back in with him, and that's when he took a nosedive into hard drugs. One night we had some people over at the house, and he was really overdoing it, if you know what I mean. He kind of went off into his own world. Even when our friends left, he really didn't seem to notice or care. I went upstairs to go to sleep, while he stayed downstairs. I laid down in the bed, and shortly after, I fell asleep. Suddenly, my entire body was shaking. I opened my eyes to see Jake violently shaking me. I looked at him, and I immediately became terrified. His eyes were bloodshot and crazed, and he was panting like some kind of rabid dog. "Where is it?" he barked. I asked him what he was talking about, and he seemed angered by this. "Where is it?" he asked again more aggressively. At this point, my initial fear had passed, and I then became very annoyed at the situation. I told him I didn't know what he was talking about, and then I rolled over in bed and tried to go back to sleep. He went back downstairs, and the next thing I know, I hear glass smashing and things being thrown around. I get up to see what's going on, and he comes barreling up the stairs and shoves me to the ground, coming down on top of me and pinning me to the floor. Mind you, I'm only 5'5", 130 pounds, and he's 6'4", almost 200 pounds. I had my phone in my hand, and he pried it away from me. At this point, I'm now horrified all over again. It was like something alien had taken him over. He was looking at me like how a lion stares down their prey. He looked into my eyes, and after a long silence, he said, "Don't tell anyone. Your phone. They can track it. Everyone knows you're here. They can't know you're here." At this point, I start struggling, trying to get away from him. He grips me harder and says 3 words I'll never forget. "I killed someone." After a few seconds, he suddenly lets go of me, bursts into tears, and runs away. I put on some clothes and book it out of the house, running as fast as I could to my car. When I got in and turned the key, I glance over to see him running straight at me. I scream, and before I could put my car into reverse and back out of the driveway, he forced open the hood of my car and pulled something out of the engine. At this point, I realized that I had left my phone in the house. Once he had got done tampering with my car's engine, he shut the hood and left, taking whatever he had pulled out with him inside. I sat there in the car, unsure of what to do. I could see him through the downstairs window. He was looking all around for God knows what. He was so focused on keeping me there and finding whatever he was looking for. As I sat in the car, I started sobbing. The car was still running, but I don't know what he pulled out of it. I didn't want to drive away and have the car break down, so I decided to make a run for it. The neighbors were close by, and all I had to do was make it to next door quickly. I waited for him to be out of sight. I then opened the car door and bolted. As I was running, I heard the sound of shoes on pavement from behind me. I turn, and I see him chasing me. His bloodshot eyes were fixated on me. I was now screaming for my life. I ran to the neighbors and beat on the door. When they opened it, I rushed inside and locked the door behind me. I then braced myself for Jake to slam into the door, but he didn't. I looked out the peephole, and he was nowhere in sight. The neighbors let me use their phone, and I called my parents to come get me. I left my belongings and my phone at Jake's place, and technically the car that I was using was in his name, so I left that there too. I have never spoken to him again. I shudder when I think about his bloodshot eyes staring me down, and the way he chased me down that day. That was the wake-up call I needed to get my together. I called the police and told him what he had said to me, but I never heard any follow-up. I figured that it might have been just the drugs talking, but if I had stayed with him, there's no telling what could have happened to me. My family planned a summer trip to visit my aunt and younger cousin Fred, who was 13 at the time. My aunt's house is a quiet country home surrounded by fields and dirt roads. There were porches on both the front and back of the house, making it look authentically country. Even though we were surrounded by the beauty of the countryside, it didn't take long for Fred and I to become bored. The sun was beginning to go down, the light was dimming, and the temperature was perfect for a stroll. Fred and I decided to take this time as an invitation to sneak out through the field behind the house. The field ended into a dirt road. We walked less than a half a mile, and we could see the dim lights at the parking lot of a small canning factory. By the way it smelled, I figured they probably canned boiled peanuts. We actually walked up to the back of the plant, where they parked delivery trucks for the night. The trucks are the type that have double doors on the back of them, and you only have to open one side to get in. Fred walked up to the back of one of the parked trucks and pulled on the door, and surprisingly, it was unlocked. We climbed right into the back. It was dark and empty. I shut the second door behind us, but I didn't close it all the way, leaving a small crack for a tiny bit of light to come through. Lucky for us, I had my cell phone with me, and I could use the flashlight. Of course, like every idiot teenager, we thought it would be cool to graffiti our own initials on the back of the truck. After we had our fun, and as we were just about to exit the truck, Fred caught the glimpse of someone through the opening in the door. He stopped in his tracks and became totally frozen, giving me a chance to look as well. I could see that a figure was walking across the parking lot opposite the truck. I thought this could have been a security guard. Fred started freaking out and hyperventilating. The man must have heard him because in that moment, he turned around and started walking in our direction. I put my hand over Fred's mouth and we both crouched down against the closed door. My head was flat against the door, with one eye looking through the slight opening. The man was now standing right outside the crack between the doors, only mere feet from us. How in the world he never opened the door, I'll never know. He was looking right through the opening in the door. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I could see his nasty, rotten teeth as he opened his mouth and coughed. Unbelievably, he never touched the doors. He just turned around and started walking towards the entrance of the plant. That's when we made a break for it. With a loud thump, my cousin's feet hit the asphalt. Before I jumped down, we both saw the creepy man standing at a short distance. He was wearing a black hoodie and ripped jeans. There was a large scar on his face from his mouth to his right eye, and I could see his broken teeth twisted into a grin. His appearance was so unsettling that I still have never forgotten about it to this day. I leapt down to the ground from the back of the truck, and that's when the man pulled out a knife. Before I could even get the word "run" out of my mouth, Fred was out of there like a bat out of hell. I truly didn't know Fred could sprint that fast as he left me behind. I then booked it, and the man took off after me. I could hear him growling and yelling profanities at us from behind me. We made our way into the fields, and it wasn't long before I could see the lights of my aunt's house in the distance. I took one last look behind me, and all I could see was a dark hooded figure standing among the tall blades of grass, watching us flee. And even though it had become considerably darker, I swear I could see the man's deranged smile from under his hood. I made it to the back of the porch alongside Fred, who was gasping for breath. We told our family everything that happened, leaving out the part about us being in the back of the truck, for obvious reasons. My aunt called the police, and after about a half an hour an officer came. They found the man. It turns out he was a former employee of the factory who had been let go because of his severe mental issues. Ever since then, I never go out after dark unarmed. Who knows what would have happened if that lunatic had opened up those doors and found us. Back in the spring of 1999, when I was 16, my family moved to a small mountain town in Colorado. I quickly became friends with the only other kid my age who lived nearby. His name was Kyle. One evening, shortly before the start of summer, Kyle and I had been wandering through the woods and found a narrow river that flowed across the property. Being bored kids, our immediate reaction was to jump in and swim upstream and have fun. We kept at it until sundown. But instead of packing it in, set them down on the riverbank and keep swimming. After maybe another 10 minutes, Kyle became very quiet and gestured for me to swim closer to him. When I was within arm's reach, he whispered to me, "Look over my shoulder, towards the tree line. I think someone is there pacing back and forth." I would have immediately dismissed his words as just him jumping at shadows, but the genuine concern in his voice made me pause. I glanced over to where he had indicated and scanned the tree line for a few wary seconds, but didn't notice anything moving. I said something to the effect of, "It's either an animal or just shadows, dude. No one has any business being on this property, and I doubt anyone else knows about this section of river." That didn't seem to put Kyle's mind at ease at all. He turned back around and looked towards the tree line again, and for a moment, there was complete silence. "Did you just hear that?" Kyle asked. I told him that I didn't hear anything. Kyle asked if I would walk up to the bank with him and investigate to see if there was anything there. I told him if we got out, we wouldn't want to go back in, and I kind of wanted to swim some more. Kyle didn't respond, but instead swam out towards the bank and climbed out of the water. I continued to swim like a moronic kid, oblivious to the notion that me diving forward into the water in the dark could have resulted in me taking my head into a hidden rock or something. I'm not sure how much time passed before I suddenly began to feel very alone. I turned back towards the bank, and I didn't see Kyle anywhere. Both of the flashlights were still untouched, lying in the sand by our shoes. I called out for Kyle as I climbed out of the water, but he didn't seem to respond. I picked up my flashlight and scanned the trees with the beam. I called out for Kyle again, half convinced that he was just messing with me. But again, silence was the only response. I took a few careful steps into the woods, around the area that Kyle had pointed out earlier. I was getting ready to call his name out again, when I noticed him. He was standing facing away from me, several yards away, staring deeper into the forest. I walked over to him, but he didn't turn towards me as I moved closer. I shouted something along the lines of, "Kyle, why aren't you answering me?" I reached out to grab his shoulder, but before I could, he slowly raised one hand and pointed a trembling finger towards the shadows. "Can you see that? What is that?" I shined the flashlight at his face. I could see that he was bone white, and his eyes were as wide as sewer covers. I barely noticed it at the time, but one detail I'll never be able to forget was a single droplet of blood running down from his nose. I turned the light in the direction that he was pointing and asked, "What?" It was like time had stopped. My flashlight beam caught a pair of legs in dark pants, and I felt my heart skip a beat. The flashlight felt extremely heavy in that moment, and if I were in any other circumstances, I would have snapped the beam light upwards immediately. But all I could do was slowly raise my arm, as if I was fighting gravity itself. The legs simply kept going, then the torso appeared. When my flashlight traveled all the way up past its chin, it had a very wide and gummy smile. It was the scariest face I had ever seen. I flipped my and dropped my flashlight. I collided with Kyle as I turned, and we both hit the ground. I screamed for him to run. Then I took off like a maniac back down the river and back at the path we had taken, abandoning everything else, including my friend. I lost count of how many times I tripped. It was at least 6, maybe as many as 10. But I continued to leap back to my feet and kept sprinting, using only the starlight through the overhead branches and the distant glow of indoor lights where my house was to navigate. I didn't say anything to Kyle. I was certain that I could hear him only a few steps behind me, crashing around the sticks just as wildly as I was. I shot through the garage door into the kitchen, screaming bloody murder. My arms and face were bruised and bloody, and at some point, I had lost one of my sneakers. But I barely registered that as I cried for my parents to call the police. I looked around behind me for Kyle, but he wasn't there. Assuming that he had run back to his own house, I asked my parents to call his parents after the police arrived. I was shaking so badly when the cops came, and they seemed concerned that I might have been overdosing on something. Then we got the phone call from Kyle's parents, and they were checking to see if Kyle had come home with me. And the police called in a team of dogs and extra men to scan the area. They located our belongings by the river, but they found no trace of Kyle or the stranger. The search lasted months, and over 100 miles worth of forest was searched, but no trace of him was ever found. To this day, Kyle has never been seen again. There was media coverage at the time, but given that we were in a small town where people get lost in the woods often, I don't know how far the story spread. What is probably the most heartbreaking is that Kyle's family is still without any answers. I live with the guilt of his disappearance every day. I doubt that I'll ever forgive myself for not stopping to make sure that he was behind me. To this day, I'm sure I can recall the sound of his footsteps behind me as I ran, so I don't know at what point he stopped, or if the thing grabbed him. Another thought has crossed my mind numerous times. What if it wasn't Kyle that I heard behind me?
A couple of summers ago, I was having some serious car problems. At the time, I was going through all kinds of other crap. My boyfriend and I had just broken up. My savings were depleted. I was caught up in some drama at the place that I was working. In the middle of all this hectic time, my car starts acting funny, shaking whenever it started, blowing clouds out of the exhaust, the dashboard throwing codes and check engine lights. Pretty much everything that could go wrong seemed to be happening to my car all at once. Here's the deal. I know absolutely nothing about cars, and you can say it's because I'm a girl, but even if I were a guy, I still probably wouldn't know anything. I don't really care about cars. I don't care about understanding them. I'm more than happy to pay someone to do all that work. Back then though, especially being newly on my own, I had very little in the way of disposable income. So when the car started chugging and rattling, it had me sweating right away. If it was anything major, I would be out of a car because there's no way I could afford it. One of my friends made a suggestion to me, and that was to find a local mechanic online to just run simple diagnostics, locate the problem, and maybe work out a more feasible solution, depending on what it would cost me. My friend had just recently needed to get some work done, went through a guy advertising on Facebook, and not only did he fix everything wrong with her car, but he was totally transparent about the cost. The guy had since booked up and wouldn't be able to help me out for at least 3 weeks or maybe even more. My car was getting worse and worse every time I started it. I got to work finding someone else online, and I started with Craigslist, but quickly found out I didn't like how just anonymous it was. I threw up a post and got dozens of responses within a day, but none of them had anything to do with fixing my car. It mostly was just a lot of unsolicited pictures and offers for dates and other kind of weird stuff. I scrapped that post within 24 hours, and from there, ventured out into the world of Facebook Marketplace. This seemed to be way safer off of the jump. People could see my post, see what I was looking for, and the people that responded also had a name and a face. Half the people that I commented on I recognized from somewhere around town. They said they'd keep an eye out for an affordable mechanic for me. By that Friday, I got a message from a guy named Simon, and this guy seemed pretty legit. His profile was a few years old, wasn't covered in over-sexually posts or political propaganda. He seemed normal, and his account had a long history of doing mechanic work. Lots of photos of him working on cars in garages, wearing jumpsuits in the shop, that kind of thing. Simon seemed legit from top to bottom, and with the situation that I was in, it was all I was really looking for. Through DMs, I learned that Simon was branching out into his own self-employment and was doing all his own work. He had worked for a major dealership in town and then worked for a couple of shops after that, was fully insured and certified. This was music to my ears, all the exact stuff that I wanted to hear. Simon said he had one job where he's finishing up and that I would be next in line. We exchanged phone numbers and I started saving all the cash that I could. I was anxious, but things were finally looking up. I didn't really know what to expect cost-wise though, but I knew this was the best option and the one that I could most likely afford. I let my worry take the back seat and then tried to focus on things that I actually had control over, like my mood and how I performed at work. I scraped together a little extra cash, had a couple of good nights out, and just relaxed. Things were good, and if I let them, maybe they become great. Sure enough, I get a call a full day earlier than I was expecting. Simon was ready for me. He'd finish up with his last customer. The fix was easier than he first diagnosed, and the car was back on the road. Again, more music to my ears. I was starting to write all my problems off at this point, like a true sucker, until you get something in writing, or even better, and see the work with your own eyes. Never take anyone at their own word. That's how all of these marketplace websites work, and it makes for a very deep headache. We exchanged information, and I gave him every little detail that I could about my car. The normal stuff, like the year, the make, the model, and symptoms of the issues that I was having, that kind of thing. He gave me the address to his garage and the time that I should arrived. Everything felt professional for a guy that I just found online, so I was even more enthralled with getting it all done and finally over with. I told Simon thank you so much for your time and that I would see him tomorrow. The address that he gave me was about a half hour away, on the side of town that I wasn't super familiar with. He told me to be there by 10 a.m., and I didn't want to be late, so I planned on leaving at 9. That never happened though. I woke to my phone buzzing around 5 in the morning. It was Simon. He said that his day had been thrown off schedule because he had an appointment later on in that day that he forgot about. He didn't want to leave me hanging. He asked if there would be any way possible that I could bring the car to him now, so he could at least take a look. I didn't work today, was already awake, and plus I just needed this to happen already. I told him I would be there as soon as possible. He sounded super excited, said goodbye, and I started getting ready. I blasted through a shower, pulled some clothes on, and scarfed down this microwavable breakfast. And then I hit the road. I don't even think the sun was up yet. I coasted along until I didn't know the roads anymore, and it wasn't until I went past that last stoplight that I realized I wasn't even in a neighborhood anymore. There were still houses out here, but there were big empty lots, full of grass between them. Still, even with the dwindling civilization around me, I didn't think twice about it. At some point, I reached over to grab my phone, check my messages, and change the song playing throughout my speakers. The second that I picked it up though, I get this incoming call from Simon, so I answered it right away. I put the phone to my ear as I prepared to say hello. I could hear Simon talking to someone else though. He sounded weird. It was his voice, but he was talking in a totally different manner. Not professional, or street if anything, if you get what I mean. Nah, she'll be here soon, he explained to someone, who sounded just as weird. Shh, I'm calling her. Then they both got quiet. Hello? I said into the phone. Jody? Simon asked, back to normal voice. Yeah, is everything okay? I asked. Yeah, I was just making sure you weren't having any trouble finding a place. I know it's kind of out there, he said. No worries, I'm on my way. I think I'm 15 minutes out, I said. Do you have another mechanic with you today? I asked. He kind of stammered a bit and said, No, why? Oh, I thought I heard you talking to someone when I first picked up, I explained. Must have been the radio or something, he said. Just checking to make sure you weren't lost. How far out is it? I asked. The map said it's not too far off the main road. You'll see, the address that I gave you is just for the driveway. You'll have to drive about a half mile to get back into the shop, he explained. I was starting to get a little nervous now. He didn't mention that it was in the middle of nowhere, or that I would have to drive off-road. My car was already having problems. Bouncing around the country road sounded like the best way to make those problems worse. Still, I'd come this far. I still had hope that Simon was going to be my guy to get me through this and get it fixed. He could hear the apprehension in my voice and went right to saying all the stuff that I wanted to hear. How we checked the engine, make sure everything's flushed, and it perked me right up and got me on my way. I said bye and hung up the phone. I'd caught him lying though, a skill that I picked up during my breakup earlier that summer. He walked right into it, and I couldn't tell why. Who'd he have with him that he didn't want me to know about? The road came up and I turned into what was a big dusty turnout along the road. From there, it was a little single rut dirt road that snaked off into the forest. My gut sank almost immediately. This was clearly not a road that led to a residence or business of any kind. There might be campsites back there, at the very most, and if not, piles of highway trash and shooting targets. I rolled my car through the lot and then onto that dirt road, and bumped along for maybe 5 minutes, then brought my car to a stop. Even with the rising sunlight, there was nothing out here. No light in the distance, no big warehouse, no shop doors, nothing. I grabbed my phone and called Simon. "Hello?" he said. "Hey, I don't see anything out here, like at all. How far did you say it was?" I asked, knowing he had already said it a half a mile off the main road. "Oh, about a half a mile. Well, I've already gone that far. I've been driving for a few minutes now," I interrupted him. "Oh, well, you're almost here then. I don't log distance well. It might be further than a half mile, 2 miles maybe, but it has to be 2 miles of a mile," he explained. My gut kept twisting into a knot. Things were starting to not add up, and I was feeling a fool for being out in the woods at 5 in the morning. Unbelievably, I kept pressing on, tapping my gas pedal and daring my car to break down at any damn moment. I go just a little bit further when my phone lights up. It's Simon calling again. I answer and bring my car to a slow roll. "Hey, I can see your headlights," he exclaims. I feel a bit of confidence for just a split second, but then I remember the string of buzzwords that he used to get me out here. I'm realizing this guy has to be a bull, and a supremely good one at that. Anytime I expressed any kind of doubt, he started saying all the positive stuff that I needed to hear, and I just take him at his word from there. "Yeah, just keep going, just back through this tree line and you're here." "Why is your shop out here, Simon?" I just asked him point blank. "Oh, you know, he started. "There is no shop, is there?" I asked in a measured tone. I was just gauging his reaction at this point to see how much of what he was saying was a lie. Then he did something unexpected. He hung up on me. I looked down in disbelief, scoffed, then froze. Shadows flickered up ahead, just beyond my headlights. I slowly looked up, and to my horror, 2, maybe 3 people were skulking through the tall grass, coming right at me. I screamed and hit the lock button, which was a relief, but I really needed to actually leave. I was panicking and wasting time. I grabbed my shift knob and slid it into reverse. Nothing happened. I could actually feel that nothing happened within transmission, or anywhere for that matter. When I hit the gas, the car still went forward. Not good. I shifted into reverse and it set, and then I shifted back into reverse. Nothing still. I shifted back into drive. Still nothing. My eyes slowly split wide open as I realized I was stuck in neutral. The car problems I was having were about to get me murdered. I continued playing with the stick, played with the pedal, but nothing was working. The engine revved, but one of the gauges just spun circles. Everything else was totally still. Everything but those phantoms beyond the windshield. There were definitely 3 of them, and they fanned out and closed in at a sickening pace. I could feel bile steaming up my throat from my anxiety, from my desperation that led me out there, and tears began blurring my vision, but I knew the car was my only hope. I kept playing with the stick until it clicked. The car dumped into reverse and suddenly I was rolling backwards, the way I came. That dirt road was bumpy and uneven, but for the most part, it was a straight shot. I didn't even bother to use a mirror at first, just started jetting backwards as quickly as the car would take me. I could feel myself hitting the bumper here and there, but that was a small price to pay in the face of whatever these dudes had planned for me. "Hey, get back here, we're gonna get you fixed up," I heard someone yell over my engine. "Come on, you were so close," another voice hollered. And then, nothing. I bucked back out into the main road. I shifted into drive and blasted towards town. Thankfully, the car was operating better than it ever had, Like that off-road session had corrected some of its own issues. Whatever the case, I was thanking God that I didn't get caught up in whatever the hell was going on back in those woods. It didn't even occur to me until I got back into town that I should probably call the police. I looked back into my messages and of course, Simon had blocked me. I figured he did the same with the phone, which was probably just some kind of burner. Thankfully, I got back home without any incident. I wanted to just go back to bed and sleep it all away, but I was so riled up from that experience. I ended up calling the police and they took a full report. I didn't do any kind of follow-up or anything, but in my gut, I have a feeling that they found him. I keep an eye on the public bookings, people they pick up for various crimes, and I saw Simon amongst the names one week. Only time I ever saw it. The last names didn't match what he had before, but the whole Facebook account was just a lure, or so I believe, to get girls like me to go out into the woods. And the scariest part of it all is the guy almost got me.
Last year, my laptop broke and I really needed a new one. I looked around online and also went to Best Buy, but then I had the idea to look on Facebook Marketplace as well. It seemed like it could be the cheapest and fastest option. I didn't need it to be brand new, and I also didn't want to wait for the shipping time of buying a used one online. So I looked to Facebook Marketplace of people that were close to me. Luckily, I live in an area with quite a few other people. I was able to find the laptop that I wanted and found one for a reasonable price as well. It was not too far away, and I contacted the seller and said that I would like to buy it as soon as possible. The seller got back to me a short time later and told me that I could come over to his house. I didn't like this idea though. Possibly nothing bad would happen and it would be fine, but I didn't want to go to a random guy's house. I responded to him and said that I would rather meet in a public location that was in the area. The man asked why, and I said that I just didn't want to go to someone's house that I didn't know. After a little more of a conversation through Facebook messaging, he finally agreed. He gave me a name of a local restaurant to meet him at and said that he would be there at 9 p.m. I agreed and then went to withdraw some cash. I wasn't all that happy that the man wanted to meet at 9 o'clock at night, but at least it was a public location. I had never been to the restaurant before where he wanted to meet, but that night I drove there and it was a smaller and older looking place. There was nothing else really that close to it, and it was kind of away from the other businesses in the area. The parking lot was in the back, and I parked and then messaged the seller, letting him know that I was there. He responded saying to come inside. After that, I got out of my car and walked inside the restaurant. The place seemed pretty old, and also appeared to be more of a bar than a restaurant. I found a small open table and sat down at a stool and looked around. I couldn't tell where the guy was. His profile picture from Facebook was not of himself, but a logo of a sports team. I looked around to see if there was a guy with a laptop or by himself, but I didn't see anybody. I messaged him, saying that I was there and inside, and asked him where he was. A couple of minutes went by, and I still didn't see him, and he didn't reply either. Finally, after about 5 minutes, I got a notification that he responded. When I read it, he said that he was sorry, but he couldn't make it. I was really confused. He had just texted me earlier telling me to come on inside as if he was there. Now he says he's not going to make it? I was frustrated and decided to just leave. I didn't even want to buy the laptop from him anymore. The guy was just too weird. I was sure that there were plenty of other good laptops for sale, and I wouldn't have a problem finding another one. So I got up and left the bar. I headed out to my car in the parking lot behind the bar and then got inside. Then I started to drive back home. The bar was maybe 15 minutes from my house, and when I got back onto the roads, they were very quiet. But after beginning to drive home, a car left the bar right behind me. I thought nothing of it at first, but the more I drove, it remained right on my tail. After making several turns, it didn't seem like a coincidence anymore. It seemed like whoever was driving that car was deliberately following me, especially because of the fact that they were following really close behind, and if I went faster or slower, they would maintain about the same speed as I was going. When I got within 5 minutes of my apartment, I started to really worry. But part of me was just telling myself, there's no way this car is actually following me. It's just me being paranoid. It was a pickup truck that was following me, and about average size. I really could just see the headlights though, and couldn't tell who was behind the wheel. Finally, I made it to the turnoff for my apartment. I lived in a pretty large complex that had multiple buildings and a huge parking lot. When I pulled in, so did the truck. That was my worst fear. I drove through the parking lot but did not stop. Instead, I drove all the way through and then left the parking lot on the other side. The truck also left with me. At that point, it was pretty much confirmed 100% to me that I was being followed. My adrenaline was rushing and I was desperate to lose the car. But still, I knew better than to speed or drive recklessly. Instead, I started turning onto random streets and into random businesses and restaurant parking lots. Then I would exit out the other side and go back onto the road. It was probably very clear to whoever was behind me now that I knew they were following me and I was trying to lose them. This went on for quite some time though, probably 30 minutes. Soon though, my light came on signaling that I needed to get gas soon. I got really worried. I couldn't keep this up for much longer. The truck was still right on my tail. I kept doing what I was doing and would probably be able to go for about 40 more miles or so. Then, when I made a turn, the truck just went the other way. I couldn't believe it, but it was finally over. I guess he finally gave up. After the truck drove away, I went and got some gas and then went back to my apartment. I was very careful the entire time, and I did not see the truck for the rest of the drive. After getting back home, I realized that the driver of the truck was likely the seller of the laptop. I hadn't really thought about it when I was being followed, but it all made sense now. He told me that he was inside the bar to try to get me to go in. I went back to look at the listing, and it was now gone. The user had blocked me as well, whoever he was. I was a little bit worried, because originally I did drive to my apartment complex, but I just hoped that he thought it was the first of all the random places that I turned in to lose him. He also wouldn't know which building I lived in, or which unit was mine. Luckily though, I never saw him again. I also haven't used Facebook Marketplace since that incident. I'm one of those people that's always getting a new phone. I get one almost every year. For me, it's just a personal preference. A lot of times, I trade in my old phone for a new one, but that's not always the case. I happened to just buy a new iPhone a while back, but I still had my old one, so I decided to sell it on Facebook Marketplace. The phone was still pretty new, and I figured that somebody would want it. I listed it for a reasonable price, and within a day, someone had made me an offer. I sold it to them, and after receiving payment, I shipped it to the buyer, which was a man named Elliot. Now, everything seems normal, and it was. He got the phone, and I thought that was the end of that. But maybe like a week later, I got a friend request on Facebook from Elliot, the buyer of the phone. I didn't know him at all, other than that he bought my phone. I clicked on his profile, and I knew that he lived in the same state, in a city that was like an hour or two away. When I clicked on his profile though, there wasn't all that much information because we weren't friends. I thought that it was kind of weird though, so I declined his request. The next day, he sent me a message. He asked me why I declined his request and said that he really wanted to be friends with me. I told him, I just sold you the phone. I don't know you at all other than that. Please don't take it personally. I just don't know you. He kept sending me messages though. He called me some things that I will not repeat here, and he seemed pretty angry. At that point, I blocked him. It was really strange to say the least, but I thought that was the end of it. Now, Elliot did not contact me through Facebook or any other social media for that matter after that. What he did was much worse. The next night, a few hours after I had gotten home from work, there was a knock on the front door. I walked over to the front of my house and looked out the window to see what looked like Elliot standing there. I couldn't believe that he was actually at my house. I never would have guessed that he would have done that. When I saw this, I jumped back and walked away from the door. He knocked again. There was no way that I was answering the door. This guy had to be insane. I heard him yell that he knew I was home from the other side of the door. I'm not sure how he knew that. Maybe he heard me walking when I went by the door. I didn't think that he saw me when I looked out of the window. Still, I wasn't going to answer it. Instead, I called the police. I told them that a man who I had met on Facebook showed up at my house unannounced and uninvited and would not leave. I was told that somebody would be there shortly. When the police got there much faster than I expected, Elliot basically stayed on my front step. He didn't try to force entry, but he sure wasn't leaving. When the police got there, they talked to him, and then they talked to me as well. Eventually, they got Elliot to leave and told him that if he came back, he would be arrested. He agreed not to come back, and luckily, he kept his word. I haven't seen him or been contacted by him since then. I still can't believe that he did that, though. This story happened my junior year of high school. Our school started pretty early in the morning, and I always had a very hard time getting up. Occasionally, I would say about once a month, I would sleep in and miss the bus. That meant I had to ask my mother to drive me to school on her way to work. She didn't mind, but was always a little disappointed. On this one particular occasion, I overslept by a lot and missed the bus. My class had already started, so I got my mom to drive me to school. When I got to school, I went to the front door and had to show my school ID to be let in. They then gave me a pass to get to my class. But I really hated walking into my class late and disrupting it. I always thought that was embarrassing, so what I would always do instead was go to my favorite bathroom, which was the least busiest one upstairs, and then wait inside the bathroom until my class was over. Then I would walk out during passing time, and nobody would know I had been late. It's weird, I know, but I was a shy and awkward kid back then. On this particular day, when I arrived at the bathroom, I was disappointed to see that it was being cleaned by a janitor. I walked down the hall to a nearby storage room that I knew was rarely used. I went inside and shut the door. I went to the wall and went behind a few boxes of equipment. Then I took out my phone and my headphones to pass the time remaining of class, which was roughly about 10 minutes. Finally, class time was over, and I emerged from the closet and back into the halls of the school. But when I did, the halls were empty. I walked to one of the main hallways nearby, which was always very crowded during passing time, but there was still nobody there at all. I double-checked my watch and the time on my phone several times to make sure the time was correct. It was very confusing to me, until I realized that we had to be on a lockdown of some sort. It was the only thing that made sense. As I approached a corner, I heard footsteps. I didn't know if this was a drill or if it was the real deal, but I did know I could get in trouble for being found in the halls, so I went back to the storage closet I had been hiding in. I made it back without being seen by whoever the footsteps belonged to. However, I heard them keep coming closer. I turned off the lights in the room and went back to hiding behind some boxes. I heard the footsteps get closer and closer, and then stop at the door. My heart was pounding as I hoped the door wouldn't open, but then it did. I tried my best to not make any noise at all. I couldn't see what was going on at all, but I knew the door had been opened, and someone was in there with me. The room was not all that big, and I'm guessing they were about 15 feet away from me. Each second that went by while I was in there felt like a minute. I heard nothing at all, but I could see light in the room, and the door was still open. I also hadn't heard anybody walk away. I was so scared that I thought about just giving myself up, hoping that it was somebody on the school staff that was in there. But I had a strong feeling that it wasn't, and I kept silent. Finally, I heard the footsteps walk back to the door and leave. I stayed in the room and laid in the same position for at least another 15 minutes or so. Finally, I could barely hear an announcement come over the school intercom, followed by the sound of students walking down the hallway. I then came out of my hiding place and joined in with the rest of the students. I found a few of my friends and asked them what happened. They told me all they heard was that a suspicious man had been arrested in our school. I went about the rest of my day at school just like any other, and I never told anybody what I had experienced. This happened around 5 years ago. I was in 8th grade at the time and in middle school. It was a normal day in the 5th period when I needed to go to the bathroom. I asked my teacher if I could go to the bathroom, and she said yes.
Take 20 to 40% off during the big brand sale at Sport Chek. Shop Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, and more. Shop online and in-store until April 23rd. Sport Chek. Say it with sport.
Walked out of the classroom and down the hall. When I got to the bathroom, I went into a stall and closed the door. After about 30 seconds, I heard the door to the bathroom open. I thought it was another student, so I stayed quiet and I heard the person's shoes on the floor. They sounded like boots. I was a little curious because not many people wore boots at our school. The person didn't even go into a stall. He just stood outside by the door. I looked under the stall door and saw that it was a fully grown man standing by the door. He saw me look and then walked to my stall. He started banging on it and I got super freaked out. Then he stopped. After about 2 minutes, I heard the bathroom door open and the man leave. I went to call my friend, but as soon as I unlocked my phone, the intercom came on. The person over the intercom told us there was a high-level lockdown and that there was a person in the building who wasn't supposed to be there. I stood on the toilet as we were supposed to do in a lockdown if we were in the bathroom. I stood there for 10 minutes or so until the lady on the intercom told us that the lockdown was over. I still wonder to this day if the man in the bathroom was the person who caused the lockdown. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. The story that I'm about to tell you took place when I was in middle school. It was during the spring semester, and it was a day that I had a dentist appointment. I went to my first class of the day, and then got a pass to leave the school and go to my appointment. My mother was waiting at the front door of the school, and when the time came, drove me to the dentist. I was hoping that my mother would allow me to just go home after my dentist appointment and skip the rest of the school day, but she said no. It was most likely because it was earlier in the day. I got back to school during my third class period. I got let in the front door and then made my way to my classroom, which was on the other end of the school. As I was walking past one of the side doors, I noticed a man wave at me from outside. I don't know what I was thinking, but I walked over to the door and opened it for the man. He smiled and said thanks to me. Then I kept walking to my class. I got to my class, and only about 10 minutes later, we got an announcement that we were in a lockdown. I immediately got a bad feeling remembering the man I had let in. We did what we were supposed to do in a lockdown and went to the back of the classroom and turned all of the lights off. I could tell by how our teacher was acting that it seemed serious. We stayed there for about 30 minutes, and finally the lockdown ended. I heard afterwards that the same man I had let into the building was found hiding in a bathroom with a weapon. Thankfully, nobody was harmed, but I learned a valuable lesson not to let anybody inside. This story happened to me when I was a freshman in high school. It's still the scariest moment of my life. It was about a month into the school year, and it was a Friday. I remember that I was in my second hour class. It was math, and we had a test that day. I was pretty good at math back then, and I was able to finish the test pretty quickly. I felt good about it, and I saw that we still had 30 minutes of class left. I asked the teacher if I could go to my locker to put my math stuff away. She said yes, and I headed out the door. I was in no hurry to get back to class, knowing we wouldn't do anything the rest of the period, so I planned on taking my time going to my locker and back. I walked slowly to my locker, which was on the other end of school. The hallways were completely empty and quiet as I walked through them. I got to my locker and put my books back. I got some gum out of my locker and then started to head back to the classroom. Our school had 2 floors, and I remembered that one of my best friends had a class right above the freshman lockers. I went upstairs to wave at him from the hallway, but when I got to his classroom, the door was shut and the lights were off. I figured the class must be in a computer lab or something. When I walked down the rest of the hallway, I noticed that all the classroom doors were shut and the lights were all off. I figured we must be having a lockdown drill. We usually had fire drills and lockdown drills early in the school year. I knew I wasn't supposed to be out in the halls during lockdown drills, so I started to walk back to my math class. After I got down the stairs, I heard footsteps. I didn't want to get in trouble, so I went under the stairs to hide. There was a little area underneath the stairs that was pretty open, but at the same time you couldn't really see from the halls. I saw it was a teacher walking down the halls. He was going pretty fast and had a concerned look on his face. He must have been looking for kids in the halls, is what I thought. He then went back up the stairs. What concerned me was that he actually started to run to go back up the stairs. The thought then occurred to me that maybe this lockdown wasn't a drill. I decided to keep going back to my classroom. I got to the sophomore locker commons, which were just in front of the math hall. But after I walked about 10 feet into the commons, I noticed a man standing in the middle of them with his back to me about 100 feet away. I didn't recognize him, and he wasn't dressed at all like a teacher or a staff member. He had longer hair and was wearing boots with dirty jeans and a black hoodie. He was just standing there looking at one of the lockers. I stood there unable to move for a second. I didn't know if he had heard me or not. I started to turn around to go back when the man punched the locker with his fist and then started to turn around. This stunned me and I quickly hid behind a row of lockers next to me. He started to walk closer. I ducked down and held my breath. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I heard his footsteps get closer and closer. He then opened up a locker. He sounded to be about 2 rows over from me. I really didn't want to stay there for him to find me, and I made up my mind that I was going to make a run for it. I listened to make sure he was far enough away, but it suddenly got silent. It was silent for what felt like forever. I tried my best not to breathe or move a muscle. Finally, I heard his footsteps start again. They were getting closer. I couldn't take it anymore, and I got out from the lockers and took off running. I ran back the way I came and took a left which led to the front doors. I heard the man's footsteps start pounding on the floor behind me. I ran as fast as I could and didn't look back, all the while hearing him about 20 feet away. Finally, I got to the steps leading to the lunchroom and out to the front door. I sprinted to the front door to see a police car right outside. An officer saw me and the man chasing me and ran in the door and grabbed me, while another officer ran past. The man stopped chasing me and ran the other direction, but didn't make it far as he was caught. I ended up having to answer a lot of questions, but we all got out of school early that day. It turns out the man was on drugs and was trying to break into the lockers to steal things. My teacher and principal weren't even mad at me and were just happy that I was safe.
When I was about 10 years old, me and my family moved from West Palm Beach, Florida to a suburban area outside of Denver, Colorado. We had planned on moving years ago, and we did so as it was getting really expensive to live in Florida no matter where you were. My parents liked Colorado as that's where most of my family lived, and they had also found a really good school for me to go to which had great ratings. I'm not going to mention the name of the school for privacy reasons, but let's just say that it was a fairly new school. It was about 5 miles from our new house, so I could practically walk there without having to rely on any sort of transportation. The new school was far better than the one I originally went to. Nicer students, nicer teachers, and it was very easy for me to talk to new friends. There was one of my teachers, who we'll call Mr. Smith, who was my math teacher who I really made a great connection with. I hated math, who doesn't, but Mr. Smith made math a lot more fun. He'd be willing to help people in class no matter how many times someone asked, and I'd also like to mention that he was hands down one of the best teachers throughout the school. I only wish I still had him as a teacher after what happened this one day. It was a Friday, which just so happened to be the last day before spring break. I was in my second to last class with my English teacher when our principal came on the speaker and told the school that this was a code red, and that all students should get inside the classroom immediately. I'm pretty sure no one in my class has ever been in a real lockdown before, so we were all huddled in the corner. A few people were so scared that they actually started to cry, thinking they were going to get harmed. My teacher told everyone to be quiet and to not make any noise for any reason. It felt like an eternity sitting in the corner, waiting for the all clear. However, I then began to hear heavy footsteps from down the hall. The only reason as to why I could hear it was because I was the closest to the back door. I didn't know if anyone else heard it, but I looked through the little glass window on the door to see a man dressed in all black. However, I couldn't see his face as he was wearing a hoodie, but I instantly knew that he was up to no good. I didn't know how it happened, but he turned his head toward my direction and must have caught me looking at him from the window. He came right up to the door and started pounding on it. The whole class screamed and cried while the man kept trying to bust down the door. However, I knew there was a slim chance of that, as these doors are bulletproof and meant to be almost impossible to break open from one person. After several bangs and kicks to the door, he had finally given up and walked away. The principal then came back on and said it wasn't all clear. Now, this is where the disturbing part comes in. Apparently, a man had just broken into a nearby gas station and had shot the employee. I later learned that 4 people, 2 of them being teachers, had been shot. One of those teachers was Mr. Smith. I was told that he was escorted to the hospital by paramedics. However, he had unfortunately died in the hospital 2 days later due to loss of blood from the wound. I still have no idea if the man was ever caught or not, but I'd like to think he was. My condolences go out to Mr. Smith's family and relatives. It's really sad to know that such a great person with a happy personality got taken away from a school who adored him.
In my early days of high school, I used to get to school super early in the winter because my older brother had basketball practice before school. I would usually just sit in a spot upstairs that overlooked the east entrance to the school and watch the sun rise. I found it peaceful and relaxing. On this particular day, I noticed a man walk into the school carrying a briefcase. I didn't recognize him as a teacher, so I was trying to figure out who he was. He then walked into the doors and went upstairs. He looked kind of surprised when he saw me staring at him. He smiled at me and told me he was substituting today. We shook hands and he walked away down the hall. After a while, it was time to go to class. My first period was English. About 15 minutes into class, I got a bloody nose. I would get them a lot in the winter with the dry air, and the teacher let me go to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom and held my nose over the sink and waited for it to go away. As I was in the bathroom, I noticed someone was in the far stall. I saw a suitcase on the ground in the stall. Then I remembered where I saw it before. It was the substitute teacher's. I found it really odd that he would take his suitcase into the bathroom with him, and that he would be in the bathroom at all 15 minutes into class when he was supposed to be teaching. After about 2 or 3 minutes, my nose was all better, and I washed my hands and started to head back to class. The man in the stall remained silent and still the entire time I was in the bathroom. I walked back to class and sat down. We started discussing a video we had watched. Not even 10 minutes passed by when the teacher said we were on a lockdown. She turned off all the lights in the room and locked the doors. All of us went into the corner of the room. It was completely silent. The teacher finally told us that a suspicious man was seen walking in the halls of the school. Seconds felt like minutes when we were all sitting there. It didn't take me long to realize who the man probably was. After about 30 minutes, they announced the lockdown was over. I went to the principal's office to report what I saw earlier. I then found out that the man seen in the halls was indeed the same man I had met and seen earlier that day. When a teacher saw him in the halls, he ran the other direction. The police were called and the man was apprehended. The scariest part of this is that they found a gun in his suitcase. It scares me to think how close I came to him when he was hiding in the bathroom.
About 3 years ago, I had just started my senior year in high school. It was most definitely the year I've been looking forward to throughout my high school career. No more bullying, more freedom, fun activities, and one step closer to becoming an adult. I say normal bullying as the school I attended didn't have the nicest students, and when you're a senior, you don't really get picked on as much. I'd also like to mention that our school was located in an area that wasn't so great. What I mean by that was that there would always be reports of break-ins, and sirens would often be heard at least 3 times a week. You get the picture. It was the middle of April, which happened to be the time where all the seniors were getting ready to graduate in June. I was most certainly looking forward to graduation day. No more huge amounts of homework and no more of those low-quality school lunches. One day, I was in school in my pre-calculus class. We were in our class listening to our teacher lecture about what to expect in trigonometry for college when we heard our assistant principal come on the speaker. She said that a nearby homeowner reported a suspicious-looking individual lurking near our school who was possibly armed. Needless to say, the whole school went on lockdown and our teacher told us to follow all lockdown procedures. Our class had this big closet, enough for at least 20 people, so our teacher told us to hide in there until the all clear. We all hid in the closet, waiting for something to happen, and eventually, it did. Fast forward to about 10 minutes later, we're all still hiding when we hear a loud bang from down the hall. I instantly identified the sound as being a gunshot. Most of the class knew it as well. All of a sudden, we hear the little glass window of our door shatter. Gunshots began firing inside the room for nearly about 30 seconds. Thank God none of the bullets hit the closet door. The shooter, whoever they were, ran away, followed by more gunshots. This continued for around another good minute before we hear 3 or 4 men ordering for someone to get down on the ground. Turns out they were police officers. They put the man in cuffs and ordered the students out of the school. As we were walking out of the class, students flooded the hallway, bawling their eyes out, but surprisingly nobody was hurt. Ever since that day, nothing has ever happened to our school. I graduated soon after, and thank God as to how grateful I was to still be alive, as things could have turned out a whole lot worse.
Last year I was a senior in high school. During 5th period, I was a teacher's assistant for a science class. I would usually do whatever the teacher asked me to, like grading assignments or cleaning the lab tables. Other times I would just do my homework or chill. It was a nice break from normal class. On this day, the science class went on a field trip, and I didn't really want to go, so the teacher let me stay back in her room and grade papers. I worked for about 20 minutes and then took a bathroom break. I got back to the room and began to grade more papers when the phone to the classroom rang. I picked it up. It was a recorded message from the principal sent to all classrooms saying they were going on lockdown as a suspicious male was seen on school grounds. I followed the directions and shut the door, locked it, and turned off all the lights. I was a little nervous being as I was all by myself in the classroom, but I knew the door was locked and I should be okay. I tried to take my mind off it by going back to grading papers. I turned on a little lamp on the desk for light. I got through about 3 more papers when I heard a noise come from the back of the classroom. The room was kind of big and had desks with lab tables behind them. I knew my mind was playing tricks on me and I kept working. Then I heard something again. This time I knew it wasn't my imagination. I looked closely around the classroom. When I got to the back corner lab table, I saw it. There was a man's shoe and part of his leg that I could barely see. I was frozen and didn't know what to do. I wanted to run for the door, but I didn't know if I could make it and unlock it in time if he chased me. The teacher's desk was kind of far from the door, but I knew I had to risk it. I didn't want to stay in the room with him. I counted to 3 and then got up and calmly walked to the door. About 3 steps from the door, and I heard more noise as if the man was getting up. At that point, I reached for the door as fast as I could, unlocked it, and opened it. I slammed it shut behind me and ran as fast as I could down the hall. I heard the door open behind me. I saw the nearest staircase and ran upstairs hoping to lose the man if he was following me. I didn't even know if he was chasing me, but I was scared out of my mind. I got upstairs and pounded on the nearest classroom door. The teacher let me in after about 10 seconds. The man did not follow me upstairs. I got in the room and explained everything as fast as I could to the teacher, who then made a call to inform the principal. It ended up being too late and the man was able to escape. I figured he snuck in the classroom as I went to the bathroom, and I don't know if he had intentions to harm me or not, but I'm just glad that I'm okay.
Years ago, I was on a cross-country road trip solo to a family reunion. I was supposed to make it to a friend's house, but the weather ended up being horrible, and it was slow-moving. Then a terrible accident happened just ahead of me. I was stuck in traffic for a while, and I ended up being 5 hours behind schedule. At this point, I was exhausted and in need of a bathroom and a shower. So I pulled into a little strip motel off of some back roads. It was obviously small and dirty, but it would work in a pinch. There was a window to the outside where the check-in was. The guy that worked there eyeballed me. Back then, I was a young girl attending college. He then asked me if I was traveling alone. When I went to hand him my ID and credit card, he insisted on cash only. Red flags were going off at this point, but I managed to gather just enough cash and he tossed me the key. The room was dirty and barely bigger than the bed. The first thing I did was go to the bathroom. Then I flipped the mattress, as there were signs of bed bugs, and a moment later, I spied a roach. That was it. I was out. I decided to use the parking space instead, and sleep in the back hatch of my SUV. I curled up, using a suitcase for a pillow and some random clothes for a blanket, and fell asleep for about an hour. I woke up, aware of someone talking on a phone outside. I glanced out to see the guy